good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome to today's episode of Law News and Laughter, or should I say, Misandry Bites, because I have backstage the lovely Chandler Remington, sorry, Chandler, who we are going to be having a conversation with. So today we're going to be talking about some buzzwords, misandry, misogyny, toxic masculinity. But before we do that, I do want to set the barometer for this one, because obviously there is an outlier that pisses me the fuck off. There we go, within a minute, yay, that I need to bring up. And I am, of course, talking about this dipshit. Now, Andrew Tate, he calls himself an alpha male. I don't really care for it. I don't see what he does as being an alpha male. He can call it whatever the hell he wants. But given that we're talking about toxic masculinity, I did feel the need to address it. Because whilst I was doing the research for this show, I did come across this, and I was less than impressed. Tate at one point actually did provide approximately £5,000 to assist a young boy who was enduring some very hefty medical expenses. But in doing so, in order for his father to receive the funds, he effectively made the guy beg. Now, for me, that is not alpha male activity. That is not alpha male actions. It's literally a case of, when you're an alpha male in a pack, at least in terms of what we're looking at in nature, for the true definition of alpha male, it's an individual who is, yes, the strongest, the best, the strong-willed, but they're also the protector. They also go out of their way to make sure that their pack is looked after. That particular action was not what I would class as alpha male tactics. Now, I'm just going to quickly run through this because I do have it right here. So this is the Twitter thread. This is what happened. So Ty Dracula, who I understand is some sort of comic book artist or whatnot, he put out a GoFundMe to help with his son's medical expenses. Tate basically said, "What's wrong with your son?" Admittedly, the guy started out because he obviously doesn't have a high opinion of Tate. So what he started with was, here's a copy of the GoFundMe, you read it, or have a literate friend read it for you. Admittedly, the shot across the bow, yeah, sure, whatever. Then he goes on to, but then Tate really digs in and says, "Do you feel like a failure that you need to help your own, the money you need to help your own son is less than a quarter of what I spend on one of my 5 cars? Like, I'm sorry. A father that's on the cusp of losing his child and you're going to hit him below the belt like that?" He then goes on to say, "I will help you if you ask. It's nothing to me. Your comic books have failed, but I am a success. Ask nicely and I will help your son." That's a fucking dick move. He then goes on to say, "This man attacked me. To be fair, I will grant you that. He called you illiterate. Sob, small violin, whatever you want to call it. And he's now begging me for money." I don't think he actually begged you for money. At least not in any of the screenshots that I saw after this. And then he goes on to say, "If you say please, I'll help." And then, admittedly, he goes on to make the donation. So there's the $4,700 that he said. He started unnecessarily. He doesn't know Tate, apparently. Tate is a savior of men, Ambic. I'm going to put you in timeout if you're not careful. The man who attacked me for having money that... What? I don't recall. But I mean, then again, I may have missed something. I only saw part of this thread. Then beg me for money. I will help any child. I've done it before after he says sorry. That's not actually what I gather happened. And then Elmo 3000 comes in. "You managed to take the idea of donating money to save a child's life and still somehow found a way to be a piece of shit about it." At least someone's calling it out. What's that? He misspelled taint. I don't even know Tate, but that was a dick move. Yeah. So, but anyway, I just wanted to say that Tate, in terms of toxic masculinity, is an outlier. He is not the sort of moron dickhead that I'm going to be talking about today, or that we're going to be discussing. He likes to think of himself as the savior and God's gift to women, or whatever the hell else. He's just a flexing moron, in my opinion. And I don't consider anything that he has done thus far, or probably will do in the future, to be alpha male behavior. He's a show-off that likes to flip his dick out on the table and try and measure it publicly. And I'm sorry, that's not true alpha maleness, in my opinion. So, I Am the Princess's real charity is done quietly and without fanfare. Abso-friggin-lutely. So, but anyway. In the meantime, let's get this started, and when we come back, I'll have the lovely Chandler Remington with me. Shall we get stuck into it, people? Welcome to Law News and Laughter. Alrighty, let me just bring Chandler up, and then we can... Hello, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you heading?
Yeah, can't complain. It's a lovely Tuesday morning, so it's, it's been pretty good. So, for anyone watching, Chandler obviously has her female fuck feminism streams.
Feminism. It's got to be family friendly now because I just got ad revenue, so I have to be very careful about the swearing.
Fuck it. So for me, I generally don't care too much about the swearing, obviously, but I actually just recently saw another YouTuber who does like fitness and PT and that sort of stuff, and almost every one of his shorts he drops the C-bomb. So I'm not so sure that it actually matters. Vice is coming in with a super chat. Thank you very much, Jeff. Never date anyone named Misandry. Yeah.
Very funny, Jeff.
And the reason that this show sort of like popped into my head was, for anyone that doesn't know of a Friday morning, I think it's like 3 a.m. your time, we do the after party where basically we sit around, I drink beer, we watch tits play football, and I talk about the stupid news that I've missed throughout the week. And so one of the things that we had was, we've been watching the 2013 Australian Legends Football League. It was the Lingerie Football League, but they had to rename it, and again they've renamed it to X League starting in 2024. Oh, and by the way, we won't be looking at any of the further games because they've made it so that they're now wearing regular jerseys like the blokes, and they're wearing bike shorts. So it more or less ruins it. So
that's not good.
No, it's not.
I'm deeply disappointed.
I don't know why they would shoot themselves in the foot like that. I really don't. It makes no sense for me. And then I was looking through the comments because they did a video displaying the new uniforms, and all the comments were like, "Yes, Queen, it's awesome! Finally, some decent uniforms." All this sort of stuff. I'm like, that is not the reason why people watch this sport. If you can't accept that, move on. But one of the things that it sort of brought up was why it was cancelled here in Australia, and beyond the fact that there was broadcasting rights that was in dispute and that sort of thing. There was also this, which is... Oh, shit, I should already had that up. Which was a petition to stop... Excuse the photo. I know this isn't the usual content, but... stop the promotion and support of the Lingerie Football League in Australia. This was launched 8 months before the league even started playing. Okay?
Oh, God, really? I didn't know that.
So
they were already ahead of it.
Yeah, they were already beyond the scope. They were already, yes, let's get in and make sure that this doesn't even start because we don't want to see this in our country. So the American Football League is touring Australia with an all-star game to take place in Brisbane and Sydney in June, which they did. Those games, sellouts. For those not in the know, the LFL is an American female gridiron football game where participants must be lingerie clad. Look... The whole thing about the Lingerie League, yes, I get that they started it as a lingerie league. You've seen the game. Would you class what they wear as lingerie?
No, I would not. It's not lingerie.
It's still a uniform. To better expose their breasts and buttocks.
It's not something you buy at, like, Victoria's Secret, you know.
No, exactly.
If they're covered, they have the, the shoulder pads going on, and, you do have coverage. It's not that skimpy.
It's more than you would see people wearing on a beach volleyball team or at the beach or, on a swim team. Certain, The point is, there are other sports where significantly more skin is on display.
Agreed.
All right. The obvious attraction of the game. Okay, so at least in this instance, they're actually admitting that that is the obvious attraction, okay, of this particular game. Triple M is supporting and promoting the league while we are petitioning to withdraw the support. The three reasons why we will not support the following organisations: Triple M, Ticketek, Yahoo Sport, Live Guide, All Phones Arena, Sydney, Brisbane Entertainment Centre, and the Telecafe, is they continue to support and promote the LFL. Seriously, they're calling for a boycott over something where they can just click a button and turn the TV off. Like, I struggle to wrap my head around this. They send a message that women's sport is only valuable if the subjects are sexually desirable in a narrow and pornified way. Now, I'd never heard the word pornified before.
Me neither. That's a new one for me as well.
So, I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily think that... I mean, there are other versions of gridiron out there, national... what the hell is it called over there? NFL. Mm-hmm. where they don't do this anyway. So I don't understand why they have to focus in on this. If there are both versions of the game and people are equally entitled to tune in and enjoy both versions of the game, why go out of your way to try and destroy something that is enjoyable to people? And it genuinely is. Like, we have a lot of fun watching these games. I mean, most of the time, admittedly, Jeff does not have any idea what the score is.
I mean, I don't know what's going on. I have no idea how football is played or what the rules are. I'm just enjoying watching the girls. I pick my favorites. I have a fun time. It's honestly, it's the highlight of my Friday. I'm so glad to be included.
Okay, where are we? Rather than supporting a sport that by its premise sends this message, Triple M should seek to foster group support for our existing female athletes and teams. Why? Here's the thing, okay? You can't force somebody to enjoy a sport that they don't like. If another version of that sport, tweaking something, comes out and people enjoy watching that, that's just you being jealous and hateful. I don't care how you try and phrase that. It also perpetuates the notion that women are inferior to men in athletic pursuits since their athleticism is secondary to their sexuality.
Okay, I'm just going to say it. Women are inferior to men in athletic pursuits. Women are not as physically strong as men. Women are not as muscular as men. Women do not have the athletic capability that men do. That's why people aren't clamoring to watch women's sports most of the time. If it's a women's version of a sport, basketball, whatever, it's not going to be as good. You watch sports because you want to see athletic prowess, and women aren't as physically strong or capable as men are. That's just a fact. It's a biological fact. Stop denying reality.
Oh, there you go. I didn't even have to be the one to say it, haters. By promoting the LFL, Triple M is undermining women's sport. I disagree. If anything, I think it probably drew attention to women's sports. Because since then, we've had the WAFL come out, the Women's AFL League, which admittedly is like... it's bigger now, but I know that they're complaining that they're not getting paid as much as men and that sort of thing. And the thing that I don't really understand with that is... sports can only pay players as much money as the advertising brings in. If people aren't interested in watching the sport, they don't have the advertisers that are willing to throw the money at it. That's not really because they're men or women. It's more because people are less interested in the version of the game. I don't really see a problem with it, as bad as that sounds. That's it. Sports, gender pay gap in sports is very... it's a non-issue for me, as bad as that sounds. I don't care because there's a specific logic behind it.
Well, the gender pay gap in sports is conducive to the degree of interest that people have in that particular sport, and it makes sense. I'm just going to say very clearly and very strong. I have a very particular opinion about this. Nobody is forcing those women to be out on that field dressed that way. They are all athletes. They should all be celebrated. There is nothing about those women. I actually think that it's demeaning to the women who play in this league to insinuate that they are not talented athletes just because they are wearing skimpy outfits. They're playing that game as intentionally as they would be if they were dressed, more conservatively. They're having fun. They're having a good time. They're doing it in a voluntary and enthusiastic manner. They are enjoying it. They are engaging in it. They don't have to do it if they don't want to, but they are athletes and they play a damn good game. And we've talked about the fact that they have like another league, where they wear like skimpier outfits and they're, the American one, and they're not as good at sports, and you watch it because they play a good game of football. I watched several games. One of the games, there was a lot of competition. These women are muscular. They're strong. They're great athletes. There was one game where the girls just weren't, as into it and they weren't doing as good of a job. I was way more invested in the game with the girls who were really, playing football. I mean, they're all playing the game. So it's insulting to the women who are playing this game to call them lesser athletes just because they are wearing skimpier outfits. They want to be doing it. They're there and they're enjoying it. That's all there is to it.
Yep.
It's demeaning to them.
Okay, so where do we go?
I have feelings. I have rants, so I'm just saying.
I am more than happy for those rants. That's fine.
Yeah.
So the second reason they said is that the Football League contributes to the negative impact of overwhelming sexualization and objectification of women and women and girls in our society.
Oh,
I'm going to make one thing very clear, people. Men are visual creatures. Of course, we're going to be attracted to attractive women who display a little more skin or who go out of their way to improve their physique. It's just the long and the short of it. Okay, take the current Legends or the X-League uniform and put it next to, say, the 2019 season. If I can't tell the difference between a player being a man and a woman without looking below the belt because they're still wearing the short shorts, why the hell am I going to actually bother watching this game over another game? Yeah, fine, it's great for the arse guys. What about the guys that enjoy watching tits? They're not going to tune in because there's nothing for them. They could be easily watching a professional football game. Like, why? I don't, you know?
Well, and the other thing that I find really bothersome about this is that, you have these women, they're engaged in playing a serious game of football. They're not doing OnlyFans, they're not doing porn, they are celebrating the sport and they're actively engaged in it. I would argue that that's much better for women, than going out and selling their bodies, on a website or something like that. I think it's demeaning and offensive to, I don't know. I've said this already. I think I've already made my point there.
Yeah, no, and Dork makes a good point here too. So, women, would Chris Hemsworth get an acting job if he did not look so good with his shirt off? And let's be clear, Chris Hemsworth started on, I think it was either Home and Away or Neighbours here, when he was in his early 20s. He was the quintessential blonde Aussie who got his shirt off as a surfer, and he was very much, young girls had posters of him on his wall long before he was in Hollywood, is what I'm trying to say. So, no, I think it's entirely a good point, Dork, is that obviously we're going to be attracted to look and watch and view and consume something more if there's an attractive aspect to it. I don't know that I think that they need to get this notion that people only watch for the level of skill out of their heads. They just do. It's not reality. So where are we? These organizations support the LFL, do not adhere to the corporate social responsibility. Bite me, that is pathetic, and we know it, because corporate responsibility is a complete and utter fallacy. Corporations have one duty, and that is to their shareholders. I don't care what corporation comes out and says, oh, we're doing sorry, Dork. We're doing this for the people. We're doing this to make sure that our corporation is socially responsible. As soon as something socially responsible conflicts with their share price, they have to do a 180 legally. Otherwise, they open themselves up to lawsuits. So I'm sorry, but every decision that a corporation makes is cold and calculated. Admittedly, some of them make stupid decisions. Bud Light. But anyway. Okay, where are we? Which is the idea that enterprises should not benefit from harmful or exploitative activities. The goal of a CSR is to embrace responsibility for a company's actions and seek to impact positively on society. Bull fucking shit. We expect this aim from them, as supporting the LFL is contrary to such a goal. Until Triple M and the other organisations withdraw the support for the degrading public spectacle, we will not listen to their radio station or support their companies. And then they've included a letter from a 14-year-old male student. How much do you want to bet this was coached? I'm sorry. If a 14-year-old male had been sat down in front of one of these games, do you think he would honestly not enjoy sitting and watching?
I mean, if he was gay, maybe. But, I don't understand why this is what they're including. The word of a child who is very easily brainwashed by feminists.
Exactly. And listen to the wording. I guarantee someone wrote this for him. Because, look, myself included, I would not have been speaking like this at 14. And don't get me wrong, I was an obnoxious little shit. I beg you, I plead to you, please do not promote this horrible, pornographic, dehumanizing non-sport coming to our country. I'm a heterosexual adolescent male, and I'm appalled that this should even be considered. The entire life of every child born in modern day is bombarded with pornography in every media form seen or heard.
This was written by his feminist mother. I'm so fucking certain of it. His two feminist moms wrote this for him.
Because of this, their whole view on life is being sexualized, but this is going too far. Of all the pornographic things flooding life, this is the most objectifying, dehumanizing, and foul representation of women that I have seen. Should we take him and drop him in certain Middle Eastern countries? Just see how he does for a week?
Yeah, really.
This is the most objectifying, dehumanizing, and foul representation that he's seen. Okay.
He's 14.
Dude.
What does he know? What does
exactly.
He know? And also, I really don't think this was written by a child, because he's saying okay, wait, if you look at the language in it, it's, it doesn't say our or my, it's, it refers to, other kids, in this particular, he uses,
He's He's using
it's
encompassing
earlier.
language as opposed to...
The language just seems like it was written by somebody else. Definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying. He's saying this is the most objectifying, dehumanizing, and foul representation of women he's seen. Dude, when you are older, which, by the way, this was in 2012, so what are we, 2023 now? By the time, by where we are now, I guarantee this kid should have already been to at least one strip club on a Tuesday afternoon, and he would know that this is far from the most dehumanizing thing that he's ever seen.
This is so sad. So sad.
Yeah. As a very
he can't have a normal childhood. I'm sorry. He can't, like, turn on the TV and be like, titties, ass, that's so great, I'm gonna go masturbate. Like, I mean, come on. That would be
This
normal.
kid clearly
so
has
sad.
not, like, this kid clearly has not been switching through pay-per-view at some point and come across, like, Skinamax or something like that. It's just like, if this is really what they're trying to push, I'm just fucking disgusted.
It's the degradation of masculinity, and it's really offensive to me.
Yeah, and we're going to get back to that in a second too. As a very popular and good-hearted radio station beloved by millions, you cannot defile yourselves by associating Triple M with this mockery. This will represent our country in perhaps the worst way possible. I'm sorry. The LFL had been running for, 5 years in America before this even touched shores here? A, the people that watch it in America thoroughly enjoy it. B, if you didn't know about it, so how is this all of a sudden going to tear down the pillars of society?
I don't get it. I'm baffled.
Yeah, no, Ghostry, just so you're aware, this was like, this is a letter that was sent in like 10 years ago, so I don't think they had Spotify at that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, if this kid put this kind of energy towards writing to, like, Amnesty International and trying to help out, like, I don't know, girls in Pakistan, or, like, helping free women from the Taliban, or, something like that. I mean, that would be, a good use of this kind of energy. I wonder where he's at now. I hope he's embraced his masculinity by this point in time. Oh, maybe.
I am 14 years old and I've only barely managed not to succumb to the crude, sexist thinking towards women. But with this in the world, the next generation will not be able to steer through their thoughts otherwise. Okay, firstly, never thought I'd say this to a child, but fuck you. Secondly, I'm only saying that, Texas Kent, a formerly proud Australian. Wow, with a name like that, it's not going to be hard to track you down, just saying. Reconsider your decision for our children, our society, and for our country. I'm sorry, I just want to say, I'm not going to stalk him. I'm just curious because I want to know where he is now. I want to know if he's cut his two feminist mums off, or if he has gone down the rabbit hole and turned full communist. I don't know, and I'm curious. But I mean, so that's sort of where this whole video started, was obviously tits and ass on a Friday, which is what we enjoy. Because I mentioned that, oh yeah, by the way, 2,010 people signed the petition. They had more viewers than that they had more people in the stands than that the first game. So it's yeah. But then, hang on, where's it gone? Shit.
This is why we can't have nice things, because of feminists. Feminists take all the fun stuff away. They don't want anybody to have fun. Exactly. They don't want anybody to enjoy. I mean, what is so wrong with enjoying women and enjoying the way that God made women? Sexy and voluptuous. What's wrong with that? Why can't we ogle? We're not, harming them. It's purely fun.
Exactly. And then this appeared in a newspaper, and I was like, what the absolute fuck? Mm-hmm. So this is the West Australian. Granted, tabloid newspaper, I don't put much stock in it whatsoever. But this was clearly designed just to be completely inflammatory. How we stop this kid becoming a monster. Call for domestic violence lessons at all schools to address the menace of toxic masculinity. I'm sorry. How is this kid supposed to be toxically masculine? Hang on, let's have a look at what they've written here. Violence prevention groups want respectful relationship programs rolled out across all WA schools amid a horror spate of murders of women at the hands of their partners. Stopping Family Violence's Damien Green said unhelpful forms of masculinity were a particular problem.
That's a lie.
So, I think you talked about this previously, but
I did.
Seeing this like as a image, what was your take?
I mean, I just had a very visceral reaction to seeing this because it it completely represents the way that males are demonized in society, and that happens everywhere. I take great offense at the idea that just because a child is male, that means that he is, supposed to be targeted and that he must be prevented and precluded from becoming a terrible human being. There is no evidence to support that. Statistically, as far as domestic violence is concerned, women actually abuse men more physically. It's just that men don't report it. The statistics are 50-50. I have a lot of sources to back that up. It is an absolute myth that women are harmed more than men. And the idea of targeting a child and treating a child this way, I mean, I have a lot of friends who are like in the MRA sphere. And somebody I know who, she's actually a feminist. She said, what if we put a little girl on the cover and we changed it to how we stop this kid from becoming a hooker? I mean, because here's the thing. She was like, it cuts both ways. It's like, if you could react to that, but not to this, what's wrong with you? All of these labels are inflammatory. And, I'm sorry to hear that there were, murders, that there was violence against women in Australia. That's terrible. But I don't understand what the connection is that they're making. It's this whole model that's totally based on a myth. And if we want to teach kids how to be respectful of each other in relationships, how not to get into violent patterns, we need to target girls too, because girls are violent. And girls can be violent, but they get away with it.
God forbid someone speaks some clear and conciseness about it and some common sense. So where are we? So here's the actual article that followed through it. So this is what it related to, and I had to jump through some hoops just to get this article too. So
I wasn't able to find it. I'm impressed that you did.
I had to do some deep diving, and the irony of it is, it shows really that the front page was purely there to be inflammatory and to piss people off, because the article itself doesn't even really, it doesn't talk about the actual kid or anything for obvious reasons, because that would just be stupid. But anyway, we'll hear for ourselves, okay? Respectful relationships, program to promote healthy interactions in WA public schools to expand to private. So, just so you're aware, people, they have these classes in public schools already where they sit down kids anywhere between the ages of 8 and 15 and talk about domestic violence and the reasons why men shouldn't lay a hand on a woman. And I agree with that. No one should be laying hands on anyone. But I'm also an equal opportunist. You want equal rights, you get equal lefts. You punch me in the face, I don't care. The relentless scourge of domestic violence in WA has led to many suggestions for solutions, but experts with actual lived experience claim the most promising chance at ending the crisis lies within our schools. I'm not disagreeing with that. I do think that a certain level of education is appropriate. Personally, I feel like this should be part of the sex ed class, which happens when, you're 13, 14, 15, something along those lines. Respectful Relationships, a program that promotes healthy interactions between boys and girls, is already run in dozens of WA public schools, but calls are growing for it to be rolled out across the state's education institutions. One of the requests from Thursday's Emergency Domestic Violence Summit, sparked by a spate of deaths of women allegedly at the hands of their partners, was to boost the numbers of schools involved in violence prevention schemes. Lynn Canyon was murdered by her ex-husband in December, while Tiffany Woodley and Georgia Lyle also allegedly died at the hands of their estranged partners and the fathers of their children. Again, I don't have an issue with the fact that this was spurred on because people were being killed. I'm very respectful of that, and the fact that they passed away is terrible.
Absolutely.
The fact that they've purely just highlighted that it was women killed by men in that sentence, though, so much for equality. The call comes as the Education Department puts the final touches on a suite of new curriculum materials focused on teaching kids about respectful relationships and consent. Starrick, a charity which supports women and children escaping family and domestic violence who do good work, runs the Respectful Relationships program in primary and secondary schools with funding from the Department of Communities. The program is now offered to more than 50 public schools and provides resources and support for teachers to educate school children about domestic violence and gender equality. There's the issue that I have. Why is it necessary to conflate the two? Gender equality with DV. I consider the two to be reasonably separate in terms of how things should be taught. Because it's very important to say, do not lay a hand on your partner. It's very different to say, men are the ones only laying hands on their partners.
Now, the whole thing is feminist coded, Hayden, and the reason that I know that is because in the first little paragraph there, they had the term lived experience. And that's something that's very much like in the radical feminist coding. The whole idea of gender equality being tied into this really comes from that whole Duluth model thing, which I've discussed. The Duluth model is this model for dealing with domestic violence incidents in police departments, and it was rolled out in the 80s. It's everywhere. It's in Australia, and it's this whole idea that, men are perpetrators and women are victims all the time, and it's totally based on myth. It's to say that the patriarchy is responsible for violence against women, and violence against men is justified because women are just experiencing reactionary abuse, to their male partners. So it's all men's fault all the time. The idea of gender equality, it's just feminist coded bullshit.
Well, see, and that's just it. And I mean, I read through a couple of articles, and I think one of the interesting ones that I got out of that was there was an author that specifically said that they believe that misandry and sexism against women are mostly mythical in a patriarchal society, same as reverse racism. Like they've actually leveled it at the same quality as that, and that feminists who speak of, sorry.
I said they say that all the time. Misandry isn't real. Misandry is a reaction to misogyny. Misandry is justified, essentially.
Yeah, because men haven't been oppressed, and therefore it's okay to beat them around a little. Like, it's just, I mean, if you're truly looking to make a equal society, then there should be none against anybody. And then there's the feminists who speak of hatred of men being trash, simply expressing a normal human emotion that encapsulates the rage, frustration, and disenfranchisement women regularly feel in a culture that sees them as second class.
So then switch the genders and see how you feel about it. If you say all women are trash, that's just men, having justified reactions to the way that women treat them. It shouldn't be that way. It's not that way. This is all bullshit, and it makes me very angry because it completely delegitimizes lived experiences, quote unquote, that, to use their terminology, that men go through. Men are absolutely abused. Men absolutely do experience misandry. Misandry is serious. Misandry is, responsible for a lot of harm, a lot of death, a lot of suicide. The suicide rates for males are incredibly high, and a lot of
absolutely.
that has to do with misandry. It does.
No, it absolutely does. And look, and that actually leads me back to a very specific, very public instance where I experienced it. A lot of them on the channel wouldn't actually realize it, but about a year ago, I actually put together a video about men's mental health. And when I showed that to people, very specifically certain females, I was ridiculed, I was laughed at, the video was disregarded, and it was just sort of classed as, oh no, you're just being a whinger, a whiner, whatever else. And this was videos about, like, guys sitting there going, about their mental health, saying, I know I can't talk about this to anybody because I will be looked down upon. My partner, my kids, my wife, they would rather see me die on a hill than see me break down because I'm their rock sort of stuff. And, whoa, Wolfram coming in with a super chat. I'll get to that in a second. And it was just like, I was so disheartened by that, by the fact that people could actually just sit there and criticize the fact that men's mental health is still a thing. And it was just like, it was a legitimate experience of misandry. And I genuinely, it took me a couple of days to get over it, frankly, because I was so fucking pissed off. Because I was sitting there trying to actually do something for men. Oh, I'm happy to share it with you at some stage.
I would really like to see that. I think that men's mental health is incredibly important. I think it's discounted, and I find it highly offensive because I think that if feminists want to promote equality, then they should care about men's mental health as much as women's. And if they look at the numbers, the statistics, if they look past what they want to see and what, they want to perceive women as being persecuted, and they want to think that women are the victims of men all the time. And it's brainwashing and it's mental illness. It's not representative of reality. Men are human beings. Men's mental health matters, and men go through struggles that they almost never share. Men have a special burden that women are not burdened with. Women can talk about their stuff all the time. Men cannot. Men don't have that privilege. Women are privileged. And we live in much more of a matriarchy than a patriarchy. Women need to start listening to men and caring about what men go through. And the fact that women dismiss men is really offensive and appalling. I used to do that. I was kind of taught to do that when I, went through like my little phase of being a feminist. The problem is that men have a lot to say, and discounting them and dismissing them, it contributes to a lot of negative outcomes for men's mental health. So if you care about equality, if you call yourself a feminist, then listen to men when they say, I'm having a hard time. I need to talk about this. I have a serious issue. Be a humanitarian. I just... Feminism is so toxic, and misandry is a necessary component of feminism, which is why I reject it.
Yeah, and I did just have a valid comment that's flown out the side of my head. I have no idea why. So we'll move on to Wolfram's super chat. Thank you very much for that, Wolfram. A gentleman or a lady will not strike each other. Should one strike the other, they are neither the gentleman nor a lady, and thus they are free game. That's very well put, Wolfram. I quite like that. I might put that on a shirt. Thank you. I'm not quite sure who that was quoting. If you can let me know, that'd be great. Yeah, it's. I mean, you talked about how women have privilege and that sort of thing. I mean, the average. Okay, so let's talk about it this way. The average prison sentence for a woman and a man committing the same crime is that the woman will get approximately 63% less of a sentence for committing the exact same crime. So if two individuals, a man and a woman, were to, bad example, but if they were both to stand on a street and shoot two different people, the man would usually get anywhere between 15 to 25. The woman will usually get around the 15, 18 mark with parole, is generally the statistics. Like, and yes, I may have pulled those out of my ass. Yeah, don't quote me on it because it's been a while since I've looked at the stats, but that's just, I know that the 63% is accurate. And it's like, when you enjoy those kinds of privileges, it's like, well, there's going to be a little bit of a reactionary thing to it. But I mean,
but that's an example of systemic privilege for women. That's systemic misandry. Systemic misandry also is like the court system, the way that it favors mothers over fathers. You do have systemic misandry. People think that it doesn't exist, but it does. We need to talk about it. Women have legitimately encoded systemic privileges that are measurable, that have verifiable statistics, and women pretend like that isn't true because they want to be persecuted and they want to be victimized. And like many that consider themselves to be oppressed or whatever else, they don't want to review their own privilege. They refuse to recognize it. So, but anyway, let's get back to this. Sorry, I always take it very, very seriously, so I get really into it. I'm trying to relax. It's just it makes me feel some type of feels. So I appreciate being able to talk about it.
That's what we're here for. I'm happy to. We do need to expand respectful relationships across schools to pick up as many as we can, said Steric Chief Executive Leanne Barron, to make sure that we're engaging as early as we can with children and young people with messages around respect and equality. But that's just it. What I'm seeing from modern day feminism anyway, is that it's not about equality, it's about equity. They want themselves raised up, but they don't want the playing field to be even. I'm seeing certain individuals that are happy to have privileges and advantages and that sort of thing. But not only do they want to get to the point where everything's equal, they want to tread on the other people on the way up.
Right. It is about superiority. And, I always say that feminism is predicated on a false notion of equality because it presumes that men are impervious to harm, and that's false. And of course, everybody wants to be impervious to harm, but you don't solve that by going and telling little school children you're going to become a little misogynist and a woman abuser unless you start simping for women and writing to, football leagues so that they don't, play football in lingerie. It's just not the solution. It's teaching boys to emasculate themselves and cow to women is not the way. Healthy masculinity should be supported and embraced. Girls are always encouraged to, do the whole girl power thing and be very proud of their gender. Boys should be able to do that as well. Masculinity is not toxic.
Could you imagine if a parade of guys were walking down the street screaming men power? Oh my God. I would expect someone to be shot.
Nope. Yep, exactly. Double standards. Everywhere.
Where are I? Ms. Barron, okay. Yes, I'm casting aspersions, don't care. Said it would be nice to see independent and Catholic schools get on board and embrace the Respectful Relationships program in their schools. At the moment, it's very much focused on public schools, and it would be really great to see independent and Catholic schools pick up that program and run with it as well. So we're really getting the whole community approach to embedding respect and equality in our school system. I think we need to look at options to expand it across the whole schooling system. Ms. Barron said Starrick's program worked with teachers to embed respectful relationships in all aspects of school life, but there were other models that worked more directly with students. There's an opportunity to look at a range of respectful relationship programs in schools, and we think it would benefit. Stopping Family Violence Chief Executive Damien Green said more frontline services were needed in schools to work with students on what sort of men and women they want to become. I thought schools were already supposed to be doing that. Like, when did, like, ethics and morals stop being something that was ingrained?
I'm not sure. It sounds good, but I'm concerned that what they're not saying is that they're not teaching things about equality by talking about males having privilege and things like that. It seems like that's the code that the thing that they're not saying that could very well be embedded in those kinds of programs.
Yeah. All right. Tiffany Woodley allegedly died at the hands of her estranged partner and the father of her children. If given funding and structural support, he said SFV would roll out such programs immediately. What we see, certainly from the perpetrator response perspective, is it's so much of a problematic belief, value, and attitude that underpin family violence that are associated with unhelpful forms of masculinity that emphasize aggression, power, and control.
There you have it.
That's where it's slotted in there. We absolutely need to spend time with our kids and young people in education to make some changes around that. West Australian schools are preparing to roll out the new curriculum requirements around teaching sexual consent next year after a national agreement by educational ministers to mandate the consent education in health and physical education. The Education Department's statewide services director, Martin Cleary, said that it was developing support materials for respectful relationships and consent education in line with recent changes to the curriculum. These materials will assist schools in effectively delivering respectful relationships and consent lessons to developmentally and culturally appropriate ways. Right. They're aligned to mandated protective behaviours content and will include ways to engage parents and schools. See, okay, I have an issue with the way that was phrased. It's aligned with mandated protective behaviours content. Protected behaviours content is girls.
What does that refer to?
It's basically it's content teaching kids about the alphabet people and to make sure that everybody is not being transphobic, homophobic, racist. Basically, they're trying to iron out all of society's problems by saying you should not do this and just drumming it into you.
So this is like DEI in America, kind of?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's language that I really disliked, specifically referring to unhelpful masculinity if you scroll up, but but if you have more to say about this.
No, that's right. That's where we got to.
When it says, okay, it says values and attitudes that underpin family violence are associated with unhelpful forms of masculinity that emphasize aggression and power and control. Mm-hmm. The problem that I have with this is that women are aggressive. Women definitely have issues with power and control, and there are unhelpful forms of femininity. You either talk about behaviors that everybody needs to be aware of. You know, you don't do this in your friendships, you don't do this in your relationships. Or you look specifically at both femininity and masculinity. If you demonize masculinity, you're sending the message to young boys who are, males are 50% of the population, that being male is somehow a flaw, and that it's something that, is a liability. I know somebody who works with young boys who are victims of harm and abuse and violence, and he teaches them how to engage in a healthy way with their masculinity, and masculinity is a healing tool for them, for them to embrace their masculinity. Masculinity should not be demonized.
Oh, God forbid gentlemen should embrace what is part of their cultural and biological heritage, shall we say. But you're absolutely right, and it's to the point where, and thankfully we're finished with this article, but as you can see what I meant, it's literally nothing in this article has almost anything to do with that initial image with this one.
Right.
What they would, admittedly, it was purely clickbait to get people to buy the newspaper. But the very fact that they felt comfortable putting that on the front page of a newspaper is disgusting to me, because it was okay to take a pot shot at what they're calling toxic masculinity in order to make a profit, basically. Because the story itself is not that bad. It underpins the fact that they want to put programs in schools to make sure that kids are basically to make sure that people aren't hitting on each other inside of a relationship. And yes, it obviously focuses more on masculinity and that sort of thing. But to your point as to the whole toxic masculinity stuff, I'd just like to specify, it is that freaking ingrained that there is WebMD shit on this. Like, toxic masculinity is now a medically recognized thing where doctors are peer reviewing on it. Like, so this one, Sarah Bailey, medically reviewed by Jabeen Begum. So someone's Begum. Toxic masculinity is an attitude or set of social guidelines stereotypically associated with manliness that often have a negative impact on men, women, and society in general. I'm sorry, when do we get the term toxic femininity? And the fact that all the pink and everything is, like, emasculating men? Like...
toxic femininity absolutely exists, and there are things specific to the way that women engage with men that can be incredibly harmful to men. And we need to point those things out if we're going to utilize this as a term. By the way, I did a whole stream on toxic masculinity, and I found like 7 different definitions of it. You know, nobody can really agree what it's actually based on. But it was coined by this man named Shepard Bliss in the 80s, I believe, and he came up with it because he grew up in a household with a domineering father who had a military background. And so a lot of this had to do with his personal experience of being abused by his father. And that's very sad, and I'm very sorry for him, but the fact that he kind of created this modality on the basis of a personal experience. Same thing with Ellen Pence, who created the Duluth model, which demonizes men and victimizes women. It's all based on, you know, a personal perspective, and these people are not really professionals. I think Shepard Bliss was a psychoanalyst, possibly, but he projected a lot of his childhood onto creating this term, which has demonized men. And, you know, I'm sorry he had a shitty childhood and that his father sucked, but that doesn't mean that all men, you know, have some inherently bad thing in them. It's offensive, but it implies that men are rotten and that you have to do something to, you know, keep the rot from spreading, and it's just not like that.
I love IMDb here. WebMD, toxic masculinity, also known as testosterone poisoning, treat with estrogen injections forever.
God.
so
It's
this
aggravating, but it's important to talk about.
It very much is. The term toxic masculinity isn't meant to imply that the idea of masculinity itself is inherently bad. Instead, it's meant to point out that certain behaviors and ways of thinking often associated with masculinity, from mental and physical toughness to sexism and homophobia, have a negative and often dangerous impact on the world.
Bullshit. Sorry.
No, all good. While you may think of the term toxic masculinity as a modern buzzword, it's been around for several decades. The term originally came about during the late 20th century. Well, here we have conflicting evidence as to where it started. They can't even agree on that. During the late 20th century men's movement to describe narrow ideas of masculinity that were holding men back instead of empowering them. They considered toxic masculinity as a characteristic of immature men who had not yet found their deep spiritual masculinity.
What does that mean?
Fuck right off.
As a man, can you speak to this? See, I'd like to know. Okay, I'm a woman. I don't have to deal with all of this stuff. Like, I get aggravated and frustrated, but I'm not a man, so I don't have to deal with all this bullshit. How do you feel about this whole idea? Do you agree that toxic masculinity is real and a thing that exists and that, you know, affects men? Like, is there any veracity to this?
See, and here's the problem, and again, that's why I wanted to address Andrew Tate from the outset, because I believe that what he does is toxic. Do I believe that it is masculine? Do I believe that it's toxic masculinity? No. I don't. I think he's just a fucking grifter. But the fact that people are looking at him and going, yes, that's toxic masculinity, that gives me the shits. Because for me, it's more, why exactly would an individual feel the need to be that uber? Like, and it's not even that what he does is considered masculine. He's just a dick.
Yeah.
But for me, thinking that something inherent about me, about being a male, about things that I enjoy doing, about things that I enjoy, about sports that I enjoy doing, about my own personal views, someone coming along and telling me that that is toxic because I have a masculine view on something, it infuriates me. It really does. Because A, how I view things has nothing to do with you. That has no implications for you whatsoever. Why exactly do you think it's okay for you to tell me to change my perspective on the world when it has no inherent impact? For this sort of stuff, it's like, I don't consider there to be something as a spiritual masculinity either. Because it's either you learn how to chop wood or you don't. There's nothing spiritual about that. Feminists ruined everything. There is toxic masculinity. It's just that these third wavers think masculinity itself is toxic. That's actually a really good way of putting it. You're absolutely right. People like Tate that take it to the 9th degree are very much toxic in that regard. Oh, hello. Jenkins with a super chat. Thank you very much. Sarah holds a bachelor's degree in creative writing in English. Jabeen obtained her MD specializing in microbiology. Someone's doing their research for us. Thank you.
Were those individuals associated with a previous article?
They're the individuals that wrote this one.
Oh, I see.
For WebMD. So you've got a creative writing, someone doing creative writing in English, and a microbiologist talking about psychology of masculinity. Like, okay.
As though that person's an authority. I mean, the problem that I have is that, I'm not going to say that there's something inherent in women that makes them the way that they are, but women are socialized to do harmful things. They're taught that it's okay to engage in certain kinds of behaviors that are harmful to themselves and to men. And I think that men perhaps are taught the same thing, but I don't think it comes from, you can't help who you are when you're born as a natural person. Being male and being female, that's not a crime. It's being a human being should not be pathologized, but that's what's happening here. We are pathologizing literally just being born with a penis, and I find that really offensive and harmful because there is a lot about being human that, like we are socialized to do harmful things, but it's not inherent to your gender. You can't help your gender or your sex, and you shouldn't be punished for that.
Exactly. They're very different things. And the other thing as well is that I see that certain activities, I cannot think of the right word, behaviors, engaging in certain behaviors are being classed as being toxic and toxic masculinity. When the hell did it become toxic to build character? That's what I don't understand. For lack of a better term, I see a hell of a lot of soy boys, and I use that term loosely because I don't really know what people use it, other people use it in. I'm using it in the context that I use it in my head, in that these are kids that have never once in their life been picked on or bullied. They've never been allowed to develop any sort of backbone or spine, and then they go crying to mummy, and it's because someone picked on them in the playground. Because, it's not like boys will be boys or anything, and it's not like you should learn how to get back up and knock them on their ass. But, Glowy still needs a man to open jars. Fair enough. Like, it's such an open slather with this whole toxic masculinity stuff that it's like we're really getting lost in the woods for the trees. Or was it the other way around? Losing the trees for looking at the woods. Like, they're trying to cover...
the trees for the forest.
Trees for the forest, thank you.
That's how I know it, yeah.
Yeah. They're trying to cover so much with this that it's... The phrasing itself is toxic to me. Like, if I look at the word toxic masculinity, I'm going to go, okay, I'm ignoring everything that is coming out of this person's mouth because I feel like they either don't understand the subject matter that they're talking about or they're just trying to degrade men as a whole because of the way that this has been designed. What's that? Neo Dark Matter says, I forget what writing class I had to take for my degree, but I got a C because the teacher never agreed with my arguments. Sounds about right.
Where are you arguing in a creative writing class?
Yeah.
Seems
and Jacob Castro says, soy boys are statistically more toxic, i.e. murderous, than masculine protectors. Exactly. That's the other issue.
Yeah, because you need a healthy outlet for your masculinity. Masculinity is a positive thing, you know? There are so many healthy and positive things about being masculine that we don't celebrate. We're not allowed to celebrate in society. So I appreciate masculine stoicism. I appreciate, taking on a lot of responsibility and taking care of the people around you, supporting and protecting women. People ask me all the time, women especially, they ask, why do you support men when they wouldn't do it for you? And I said, well, men support me constantly. That's why I do it, because I'm not benefiting from advocating for men, and that's the whole reason why I do it, because I feel very supported and protected as a woman. I have a lot of people advocating for me. I have a lot of people looking out for me. I have always been, in a position to receive a lot of benefits as a woman, and I've never been oppressed for being a woman. I can count on one time I've ever experienced misogyny in the workplace, and I work in the legal field, so it's a very masculine environment. I am not oppressed, but a lot of women want to be oppressed, so they will find reasons to be oppressed, and they will look at things like masculinity as being toxic. I think the guy that invented this term came to really hate his masculinity because he hated his father, and I don't think that it was an appropriate reaction. I don't think that it comes from a place of a genuine sort of form of research. This is just some dude who had a really terrible experience growing up, and I really feel for him. But masculinity isn't the issue. It's when people can't handle, their aggression and their rage, and they take it out on others. But, anybody being abusive, women and men can both do that. So the problem I have is, why is this term being used, and what does it solve? What does it go towards? Is it, helping us understand each other between males and females? Is it helping us improve upon negative behaviors? Or is it just, demonizing people for no reason and making them feel small and shitty for something that they can't help but be born as? I don't see how this is a useful term. And I think that it alienates men from women, and it makes men feel like their masculinity is not acceptable. And I find that really problematic.
Wait, what's that? Guess what further devalues men? The definition of toxic femininity. Toxic femininity refers to the adherence to gender binary in order to receive conditional value in patriarchal societies. Wow,
That's
so they even
gibberish.
managed to twist that.
Gibberish, total gibberish.
Yep. But no, I mean, and I'm not sure if it's in this article or if it was in another article that I read about a study. The fact that they twisted it so that it was, so what they did was they took a bunch of men, they had them do what would be considered traditionally feminine activities, braiding a little girl's hair or cooking or whatever else, and then they had them go and do a masculine activity, like boxing or exercising, going for a run, all that sort of thing. And basically what they said that the study showed was that toxic masculinity meant that men had to find an outlet after doing feminine activities, and therefore that the toxicity is ingrained in them. I'm like,
That's
you
the stupidest thing I've
seriously?
ever heard.
Exactly. Way to just twist an entire study just to try and prove that men might like to hit a boxing bag every now and then.
It's amazing, how, that somebody just goes to a university and they learn some bullshit in some stupid class, and then this is research, this is being funded, this is something that, that they're actually putting money towards, and people are taking this seriously, it's a scientific fact. Screw that. That's completely retarded.
Because of how it was, they considered it so toxic, because what they did was, while the gents were doing doing whatever they considered to be feminine activities, they were monitoring their vitals. They said that they noticed that there was a distinct increase in anxiety, in various other things, and then that they then had to go and do something they considered masculine in order to reduce the stress levels. I'm like, dude, have you ever tried to braid a little girl's hair? I don't know how the fuck to do that. Of course I'm going to be anxious about it. And using a stress relief as a inherently male thing, I think that's pathetic. I think that anybody is going to reduce their stress levels, male or female, if they stand there for 10 minutes and wail on a boxing bag to let their frustrations out. So no, I think that entire thing was just completely pathetic.
I mean, there's also you're in a study and these people are watching you and they're judging you and you don't know why and you don't know what they're trying to measure. And so it's anxiety inducing to, have people judging your behaviors and you're having to perform for them and you really don't know what the purpose of this is. So you go into a scientific study, somebody says, hey, braid this little girl's hair. You don't know what the fuck they're asking you to do. You don't know why. If I was put in that situation, they were telling me, do these traditionally masculine things, go change a tire. I'd be stressed out because I don't know how to change a tire. Nobody's ever taught me how to do that. If they told me to, change the oil in a car, or, think of something else that's traditionally masculine, watch football, that doesn't involve cute women running around in bikinis, just dudes. I wouldn't know what was going on. And if they asked me, okay, like, who scored and how, and can you explain that, that play, I would not be able to do that. So if they gave me a traditionally feminine thing at the end of the day, I mean, I'm like maybe more gender stereotype, but like I would probably be like, finally, something that I enjoy, like, painting somebody's nails or, take a bubble bath or I don't know, whatever it is. I just can't believe this is science. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It doesn't make any sense. And to code things as masculine and feminine, like, it's the same thing as, like, I'm going to trans my kid because she likes pants instead of dresses.
Mm-hmm.
We need to stop with this. It's bullshit. It's actually
absolutely. And look, I know it's a ridiculous thing, but to be fair, if we were doing that, I think my daughter would have changed her gender 5 times last week because she argued with me about whether she wanted to wear a dress one day, pants the next, and just... She went dressed to daycare as a superhero yesterday because she wouldn't wear anything else. Am I supposed to try and inject her with a super serum or something? Like, they're being ridiculous. Where are we? So, where is it? Well, you may think toxic masculinity is a modern buzzword. It's been around for decades, blah, blah, blah. Got through that. They considered toxic masculinity a characteristic of immature men who had not yet found the deep spirituality. This men's movement sought to increase community amongst men rather than competition. Why? Who in their right mind decided that competition amongst the species is a bad thing? For the most part, competition is what has led to some of our greatest advancements as a society. Look at what the US did, making it to the moon before the USSR, because of competition. And because guys decided they wanted to flop their dicks out on the desk and say, yes, we've been on the moon. Excuse the crassness, but you know what I mean. They sought multi-generational bonding as they felt that the inability to bond with their fathers was a source of emotional damage. What was that? How dare you not get her hero-affirming care? To be free to express emotion. For all the good things, this movement still contained harmful ideas. So even when they think that this gentleman's group is moving towards being more feminine, they're saying, no, they didn't go far enough. We still think that all this was still toxic.
I mean, who decides and why?
Exactly.
Shouldn't you measure the outcomes? Like, are men doing better mentally?
Mm-hmm.
What works for men? What's helpful and healthy for men? Does that matter? Or is it just based on your concept of what healthy masculinity is?
Exactly. Many men felt their voices being silenced by the feminist movement, that excessive interaction with women was causing them to lose their internal masculinity, and that accusations of sexism from women were leading to emotional damage. We'll get to the accusations section in a minute. The phrase toxic masculinity was later adopted by the fourth wave of feminism, a wave that started about a decade ago. This wave focused more on intersectionality than the waves before it. This is the idea that sexism is just one part of a systemic oppression, along with ableism, ageism, classism, homophobia, and racism.
Yeah, I learned this shit in college. It's so biased.
Okay. So here we have a medical journal article giving the red flags of what toxic masculinity is. Homophobia, a need for control, promiscuity, refusing to help with household duties, risk-taking, sexual aggression towards women, stoicism, and violence.
It's all over the place. I mean, I can't believe this is in WebMD. Stoicism is a highly regarded and valuable trait, and if that's toxic masculinity, then I'm toxically masculine because I'm a stoic person.
I have been married for 7 or 8 years now. Don't sue me. My anniversary is coming up in November, I think. No, October. Wife's birthday's in November. The simple fact of the matter is, there have been multiple times during our marriage where she has said to me, I want you to be a rock. I don't want any emotion. I just want you to be the rock. That is the stoicism that apparently I'm supposed to internalize, and yet it is apparently toxic masculinity. How the hell is that? How does that sort of marry up? How is that fair? For internally within a relationship, I'm being told I need to be strong, I need to be supportive, I need to be a rock, I need to be stoic. But oh god, no! Everyone society from a feminist perspective is apparently telling me, no, that's wrong. You need to cry like a little baby and probably have a relationship deteriorate to the point where it explodes. That's
I mean, well,
bullshit.
when it's coming from a woman, it's coming from your wife. So how is it a toxically masculine trait when it's, a woman who's asking you to do it? I don't understand that. That doesn't make any. Is she just reinforcing toxic masculinity? Does she need to, check her standards and her perceptions? I just don't understand this, and I don't agree with it.
No. So, I mean, and what they've said is that it's a cornerstone idea of toxic masculinity is that showing emotion is weak and feminine. Men are expected to be mentally and physically tough without breaking. Statistics and studies show that men are less likely to pursue mental health services like therapy, despite being 1.8 times more likely to commit suicide. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about when I said about that video about men's mental health. God forbid men should actually speak up. And it's literally, because in that video, it was, I clipped together probably, it was either 8 or 10 men basically saying, because there was a clip that said, who do you turn to and who do you talk to when times get tough? And the last one literally said, we're allowed to talk to somebody about it?
Oh, I just watched that. Somebody replied to that, because I posted something on Twitter about men remembering compliments. There was some meme, and I asked, men, is this true? Do you remember compliments? And everybody said, yeah, because we receive them so rarely. And somebody replied with that video. It'd be like, who do you turn to, when you need to talk to somebody? And they all said, nobody. I'm a man. I'm not, you're talking to people like that. They were like, at first I laughed, and then I started crying. It was really, I don't know. I get in my feels about this kind of stuff. It's really emotional for me.
Yeah, and yet when I took that video, added some other stuff to it, including Jordan Peterson talking about it and whatever else, I got laughed at. On stream.
I'm sorry, that's bullshit. Fuck that.
Yeah, I was not impressed. But I mean, if you actually look at all the different things that are in here, I mean, this could equally be applied to toxic femininity, if you want to call it that or whatever else. Because anybody can be homophobic. Anyone can have a need for control. Anyone can be an absolute control freak. I mean, look at a bridezilla in the weeks leading up to a wedding day. Toxic masculinity encourages men to assert their power and dominance. I'm sorry, I've seen plenty of interactions between men and women where the woman has felt the need to assert their power and dominance, whether it be from a position of power or whether it be one of those videos where it's an individual and they do the social experiment where, you see two parties getting aggressive into an argument, and in one it's the female that's the aggressor, in the other one it's the male that's the aggressor. And 9 times out of 10, other members of the public will intervene when the male is even just yelling at the woman. But only 2 or 3 times out of 10 did anyone intervene when the chick was clobbering the guy, actually laying into him.
I've seen that, and it's really depressing. But it's eye-opening, and it's important to watch.
Toxic masculinity praises men for having multiple sexual partners while expressing distrust at women who do the same. Let's be perfectly honest, okay, people? Blokes judge the hell out of each other as well. Yes, you see the whole backslapping and locker room talk or whatever else. Yeah, sure, well done, mate. You've had sex with a whole bunch of women. After a certain point, we still start looking at each other as sluts. I'm just putting it out there. These hands are rated E for everyone. Well, there you go. And apparently being a risk taker is considered inherently toxic. What's that? I haven't spoken to my wife for 18 months. I don't want to interrupt her. I like that. Sexual aggression towards women. Look, I got to give them that one because they included the words towards women. But I mean, everything else in this I feel could be equally applied to either gender.
Well, what about gay men? I mean, and also, are women not sexually aggressive towards men? Because they absolutely are.
Oh, there's plenty of women that are sexually aggressive towards men. Angel Australia coming in with a member rant.
Angel Australia.
Look, fantastic. One of my favorite YouTubers. Oh, thank you, Angel. I'm not going to lie. I needed that today. Thank you. You make a lot of people smile, and you are not a piece of shit. Thank you. Very much appreciate that.
I love Angel.
The manosphere guys are compensating. I think men should be allowed and encouraged to express emotions and are reprimanded for living in them. 41-year-old male. I get made fun of for tearing up in all things because I can picture my daughter in these situations, happy or sad. Inside Out movie is my current bane. I haven't watched Inside Out again. I watched it once. Surprisingly, the one that gets me is Monsters, Inc., mostly because my little sister is actually the spitting image of Boo. So I
yeah.
don't watch it anymore. Um,
I remember that one. It's a cute movie.
so, um, while toxic masculinity is harmful to men as a whole, one of the ways that it affects society is it encourages and leads to violence. Aggression and violence can happen when a man feels he has failed to live up to society's expectations of masculinity, or when he is trying to assert his dominance and masculinity. Like, what the fuck? So, they're basically trying to put it down to, because this guy is socially encompassed and he has testicles, he's getting testosterone, therefore he must be violent, and this is a reason for it. No, generally social engineering and a few other components will lead to someone opening up in a mall with an AK-47 or something. Doesn't necessarily mean it's because they're inherently male. Let's be fair, a bunch of women want the men to be aggressive within reason. That's very true, Abomination.
There was that one case of that guy who, he shot a whole bunch of people that he worked with and then, unalived himself because he was in love with one of the characters on Danny Phantom, and he wanted to go to the afterlife to live with her. So, it's just, there was
that's
that
not
other
masculinity,
guy.
though. That's mental illness.
Right, exactly. And, like, the My Little Pony shooter who wanted to go and be with, like, Applejack in the Eternity. Like, I'm sorry, but, just because a man commits a violent act, it doesn't mean that it has anything to do with testosterone. At all. He could be just crazy or delusional. To
be fair, I do need to check. To be fair, I would need to look into that and find out exactly which character from Danny Phantom, because some of those cartoons were hot.
It was Ember, I think, the female. I don't know. I watched the whole thing.
Annoyingly, I get it, but at the same time, the guy was clearly sick in the head.
Clearly.
Every October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the Violence Policy Center releases its When Men Murder Women study, an analysis of the year's homicide data. When analysing murders of women committed by men, the 2020 study found that 1,600 out of 1,800 female homicide victims were killed by the men that they knew. 2022 homicides involved a single female victim and a single male perpetrator. 60% of the victims knew their murderer were intimate partners or ex-partners. 61% were killed with a gun, and most often women were killed during an argument.
Yeah, and 79% of non-conflict homicides, that is like homicides that occur outside of war, are men. 79% of people who die worldwide every year are men. And apparently that doesn't matter at all.
Nope. Apparently not.
No. I care about women who are murdered. I'm not saying that that's not important, but men also die because of gender issues and gender, specific issues, and that's not something that anybody's addressing at all. I think both things need to be addressed. We also really do need to address, the suicide unalivement rate for men. That's really important to look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we don't.
So what are they saying are the risk factors for engaging in toxic masculinity? Being in a dysfunctional hang on, let's check whether or not it's there first.
Sorry.
Dysfunctional family environment. Okay, anyone that's in a dysfunctional family environment, anyone in a dysfunctional family environment is susceptible to any number of things. You don't necessarily have to engage in toxic masculinity to want to murder your family. Exposure to social norms that encourage violence and male dominance. Good God, keep people out of Fortnite then. Exposure to violence at home, in relationships, and in the community. That's a whole separate issue to me. Because that is literally, whether you are male or a female, if you are raised in a home where there is exposure to violence at the home, there is a significant chance you are going to go on to become an abuser, because we know that there is a direct causal link between being a victim and potentially becoming an abuser years on down the track. There's been any number of...
If I may interject.
Of course.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that, studies or whatever.
No, well, yep. I mean, it's true, but, the thing is that, like, while there is a likelihood of somebody, who is abused, ending up, perpetuating abuse, it's far more likely for people who experience that in the home environment, whether they're male or female, to have a high risk of mental illness, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, suicidal behavior, actually, committing suicide, eating disorders, lots and lots of, social dysfunctional problems. There are lots of issues associated with growing up in that environment. It's not about masculinity at all. It's just, it affects all people. So you say you have a brother and a sister who, the parents are violent or abusive, and what, the girl's going to be normal and okay, and the boy's going to grow up to abuse a woman? Like, I don't believe that. It's not necessarily like that.
No, and
Anyway,
that's the
I'm
way
sorry,
that they're
but go
trying.
on.
No, that's perfectly fine. That's the way that they're trying to phrase it, and it's just completely ridiculous. Lack of access to mental health services. Oh yes, yeah, because look, don't get me wrong, blokes do need to take more of a rein with their mental health. If you're experiencing any sort of, if you're being chased by the black dog, if you're having a particularly hard time, if you need to talk, make use of the services, okay? If you're in Australia, I can't remember if it's in America, but Beyond Blue, for God's sakes, pick up the phone and just talk to somebody. They're not going to judge you necessarily. Well, I mean, they may judge you, but you're never going to know because you'll never talk to that person again. Lack of behavioral control and social rejection by peers. So how do they actually want to tackle this, though? It's important to be aware that not all toxic behaviors in men are caused by toxic masculinity. Wow, we are already like 75% of the way through the article, and that's where they've hit this nail. It's also important
about it.
Yeah, it's also important to know we don't assign blame to toxic masculinity and avoid personal. Important that we don't assign the blame to toxic masculinity and avoid personal responsibility. That's what this entire freaking article has been about. Avoiding personal responsibility and saying it's about toxic masculinity. It's about how boys are raised. Jenkins is like, wait, lack of behavioral control is a risk factor and stoicism is a sign. How the fuck does that make any sense? It doesn't. It really doesn't. So prevention strategies, creating marketing campaigns to change social and cultural norms around masculinity, educating parents on the damage that physical punishment and humiliation techniques do to kids. I'm sorry, I got wrapped around the ass for when I did something naughty. That doesn't necessarily mean that I grew up to be a whack job or that I'm going to go out and act like Andrew Tate. What, are you kidding me? Oh, hang on. Angel Australia with a $5 super chat. Thank you very much. PSA to chat, Aussie, Chandler, you are loved, needed, and appreciated. Thank you, Angel. Whoa, hell, while there's 93 of you here watching on YouTube and 38 over on Rumble, hit the like button, people, because, you know, the more the better. Okay, where were we? Identifying and treating psychological distress. Well, that's not just about toxic masculinity. That should be about every form of mental illness. Like,
yes.
Offering programs that positively integrate boys and men into society. What, you mean like school? Like, I'm confused. Why is it that all of a sudden we've gone from men were raised to be men to now we need an external program, probably instituted by the government, in order to make sure that men grow into the people that society wants them to be, as opposed to who they need to be? Like, why is this a thing, Chandler? Do you think?
Why is what a thing? I want to.
Why is it that all of a sudden we have to have programs? Why do we have to, like, what was wrong with just sending kids to Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or, like, even just being raised by a father? Like, how is it that all of a sudden we have to take them and put them into an actual program within school or within the educational system or whatever to try and teach them what external factors are saying that men should be, as opposed to letting them grow naturally within their own within their own holistic environment, shall we say? I hate that word. I hate holistic.
I mean, I actually have a pretty good answer to that. I mean, when they say offering programs that positively integrate boys and men into society, there actually is a need for that because schools now favor girls. And there are lots and lots of educational programs that put girls at an advantage, and boys actually fall behind. The academic outcomes for males have significantly declined and decreased academically. There are lots of studies that have proven that. I actually have an article that I posted about the myth of misogyny, and it indicates that schooling over the past, like since the 90s, essentially, males receive less and less attention and care, and there are lots and lots of programs for girls. And so the idea of positively integrating boys and men into society, they're half of society. So the idea of integrating them means that we are living in a female-dominated society that we somehow have to find a place for masculinity in. I have a really hard time with that because the problem is that it indicates a true scenario that we are living in. There's female dominance, and we have to somehow fit boys and males in, and it shouldn't be like that. If we really wanted equality, if feminism really achieved equality, then boys wouldn't need to be integrated. But it actually calls attention to the fact that girls get special treatment, and boys are falling behind. And I don't understand why we're not addressing this systemically and creating equal educational opportunities for boys and girls. It really shows, girls are just favored, and that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. So, I mean, look, switching gears slightly, in terms of workplace employment and that sort of thing, because feminists seem to be all about making sure that there's equal opportunity and all that sort of stuff, but it does seem to be pretty clear to me that they're not really applying for the tough jobs. Like, hang on, what did it say? Why do you think feminists are pushing for more female CEOs and government leaders, but not for more females entering the top 20 most dangerous professions?
Because women know that they're privileged and that they don't have to do those sorts of jobs. And secretly, women know that men are better at those jobs. I mean, I've seen this trend on TikTok with all these young people, and they're like, all the feminism left my body when, this guy decided to fix my driveway for me. Or, like somebody decided to do like a masculine thing. And it's just like, we know that we're not good at stuff like that. And we know that we're not going to do, we're not going to work on oil rigs. I mean, maybe like 2 women are going to do that. We're not going to be garbage people. We're not going to, we're not going to, be construction workers. And yet we need that in society. We know that we're privileged. And it's this really big double standard. We expect men to do it for us, but we also want to, complain about not having equal pay when those jobs pay more and you're not willing to do them. They're more dangerous. So you're not choosing that. There is, a wage gap, but the gap is entirely based on choice. Sorry.
No, fair enough. All right. And I think probably, where are we?
Also, the patriarchy is a myth. Just saying.
All right, we'll talk about this one quickly, and then then we can decide if we're going to talk about the dark side of Me Too. But I do want to talk about this side of Me Too, which technically I suppose is still the dark side. Men are afraid to mentor women after Me Too, and it hurts us all, according to a study. Now, this was back in 2019. Now, because there was another one that I was looking at where I was a little bit pissed off with the phrasing of it, and I didn't really want to give it airtime, because they said, after the misogyny of the Depp Heard trial and various other bits and pieces, and I was just like, seriously? Are people just no, I didn't want to.
No, I'm with you. I wouldn't be able to get past that either, because one of my biggest pet peeves is when people use the word misogyny and throw it around, like it's nothing, because misogyny is, it does exist. It is serious. And if you call everything misogyny, soon it's going to be completely it's not going to have any meaning or any value.
No, exactly. It's the same as everything else that seems to be drama bait lately. I mean, I'm going to go there. Racism has almost lost all meaning at this point, because everything done under the sun at the moment where there's any sort of difference in skin color is classed as racist, and for some reason people are trying to use that to manipulate it for their own benefit. And that's the part that really fucking frustrates me about things, is that it's not that they're calling out inequality or inequity for the benefit, it's because they seek to gain personally from it. And that just... Anyway.
Well, it's also about obfuscating responsibility, and if I may interject really quickly, it's this, like, I saw that story, there's this, there was a woman who stole from a store, and a cop pursued her, and she tried to run over the cop with her car, and the cop shot at her and killed her. Now, the woman was black, but she was pregnant. The cop was white. And so everybody's crying about this pregnant woman being killed by this cop. This cop was almost murdered by this woman who was trying to, evade arrest. And I'm really, really sorry that she died, and I'm really sorry for her family that happened, but she tried to kill an officer. So it's not really about skin color, it's about obfuscating responsibility and increasing victimhood in situations where you can't just say, wow, that person is, part of my race, but I'm really disgusted by that behavior and I'm not going to stand behind it. We need to stop looking at it like a tribalist thing, and we need to start, talking about behaviors separate from who these people are. You know what I mean? It's, victimizing yourself is just not going to help society.
No, exactly. And Ambic, I'm going to bring this one up because it was funny, but it's horrible at the same time. Doubled his kill-death ratio with one shooting.
Oh, God, that's terrible. That's really bad.
That's really bad. Okay, so I pulled this one up. Men are scared of women now. Men
You don't say.
after Me Too have always been scared of women, let's just say.
Here, you read this. I'm going to be right back, but I'll be listening.
No worries. No worries. Leanin.org, SurveyMonkey's new Mentor Her poll reveals on Friday that 60% of male managers report feeling too nervous about being accused of harassment to interact with women in common workplace activities, such as mentoring, socializing, and one-on-one meetings. And obviously that's going to be the case, because what moron is going to potentially put their entire career at risk when we know that there are individuals that have cried wolf? And I'm sorry, that's just the long and the short of it. Polar Bear here, misogynist, racist, homophobe, transphobe, etc. They've all lost meaning, so they create other ways. That's a good way of putting it. Men are afraid because of the harassment allegations. Exactly. That's a 32% spike from 2018, with an additional 36% of men saying they now actively avoid women in junior level positions, especially effectively chopping down their shot at climbing the corporate ladder. The vast majority of managers and senior leaders are men, says Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook Chief Operating Officer and founder of LeanIn.org. In a statement, she said that if they are reluctant even to meet one-on-one with women, there's no way women can get an equal shot at proving themselves. So, way to shoot yourself in the foot. Excuse me. Widening the gender gap is actually an abuse of power, she says. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you may be Me Too'd unnecessarily, or if something's misconstrued or whatever, but apparently now that of itself is abusing power. We're in a bad place. No one's gotten promoted without a one-on-one meeting. I feel confident in saying that, Sandberg says to CBS This Morning host Gayle King on Friday. Why did they capitalize the F in Friday? That made me think that her last name was Friday. Is it actually Friday or is it Gayle King? Senior men right now are 9 times more hesitant to travel with a female and 6 times more likely to hesitate to have a work dinner. Work dinner? Okay. Women and especially... Oh, fuck, New York Post at times. Women and especially women of colour don't get the same amount of mentoring as men, which means that we're not getting an equal seat at the table, she said. It's not enough to not harass us. You need to not ignore us either. These women just can't be happy with anything. The study reports that the fear factor grew in concurrence with the rise of the Me Too movement, social media movement founded by activist Tarana Burke, and fueled by a torrent of models and actresses accusing Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby of sexual harassment and assault. In the last 3 years, scores of women and some high-profile men, such as Terry Crews and Anthony Rapp, came forward to voice their experiences with harassment by people in positions of power. Now, Sandberg says it's time for men to step up and redefine what it means to be a good guy at work before it costs us all a whole lot of cold, hard cash. There's not a company in the world that can afford to leave talent on the sidelines because it's female. They're not... Okay.
This article's so backwards. It is ass backwards. I have so much to say about this. Like, it's like you think they're talking about how men are being harmed by something, and they manage to make it all about how women are the victims and men are responsible. I mean... It's like, a man walks into a room and then a woman comes into that same room and she's carrying an axe and she swings it at him. And then, whoever wrote this article would be like, well, he shouldn't have been in that room in the first place. He needed to, protect himself from the axe better. She was just reacting to him being male. Like, the whole thing is blaming men. And I don't understand why people don't realize how messed up this is. It's ridiculous.
Wait, what's that? During the 2016 election, a feminist on Twitter said she wanted Bernie to be forced out for Hillary to win and called for 6 women to join her in falsely accusing him of SA. She said 7 was the magic number.
Yeah,
how many women have come forward against Russell Brand yet?
Oh God, I don't know. I'm not sure. 5 or something like that.
Okay, so we're getting close.
4 or 5. One of them just was like, oh yeah, he flashed his penis at me and said then I had sex with him later. And I'm just like, are you...
Well, that sounds like she saw something she wanted, so... But anyway.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
so
that's...
because she didn't consent to it, right?
I'm pretty sure it's called an invitation to treat.
Yeah, They included her in the article as a victim, and I'm just like, are you serious? Are you serious? This whole thing about, okay, that what was just mentioned, like Evan Rachel Wood wanted to change legislation to make it so that if more women came forward against a perpetrator, that it would increase the statute of limitations. And if you look at the Marilyn Manson case, you have a lot of women who are making claims that have dubious origin that can't be substantiated, and these women have really significant credibility issues. Two of them fabricated a false FBI letter. The whole thing is bogus, and so the idea is, well, if we can get enough women to lie about this one guy, then we can get him put away.
It's basically what it boils down to, yeah.
It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery fucking slope.
Oh,
Anyway.
I think that particular slope is probably like well and truly lubed up. But yes, I take your point. I mean, in terms of this specific article, I mean, as I said, this was from 2019. They're basically claiming that it's literally a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because men are specifically taking themselves out of a situation where they can be accused of sexual harassment or of bias or whatever else by removing themselves from the situation. I don't really see anything wrong with that. In this regard, it's literally, yeah, but then you're ignoring us, so we're not going to get up the corporate ladder anyway. Okay, fine. So you've just proven that you've just said to me that there are definitely women out there that will try and Me Too someone to move up in the corporate ladder.
Yeah, the whole article is like women complaining and saying, well, you know, we have so much privilege. Like, we need men to stick around. We need you to mentor us. And if we don't like what you're doing, then we can accuse you of rape. And we have, you know, even though nothing ever happened, and we have the right to do all of that because we are owed reparations. Like, I've seen a tweet go around, you know, and who knows how, you know, if this was a parody, but it's really disturbing. It was a woman who said something like, men who are falsely accused just, you know, just put up with it and go to jail because women have been through so much. It's like, are you
I was
kidding
trying
me?
to find that tweet and I couldn't. I was going to pull it up for the show.
I'm sure I have it bookmarked because I've seen it so many times. It's horrifying.
Like, yeah. Because...
See, you're on this. Like, we're on the same wavelength here. This article infuriates me.
And I mean, more to the point, why is it a case of why should it matter? I mean, if women are looking to be mentored, why is it an issue for women to mentor other women? Like, they're literally, in this article, they're basically saying, well, the only option for us is to be mentored by men, and because they won't do that, we've hit a glass ceiling. Okay, fine. Go outside your organization. Go and look for the very specific groups that have been set up for women to promote other women. Like, if you're going to bitch and moan about it, sure. But, for lack of a better term, this is contributory degradation as far as I'm concerned. You are actively... Wait, hang on. When I played Little League, one of the last things my coach gave me was a Post-it note, because he gave everyone little inspirational quotes. And it's interesting how this particular one could be twisted, because what he said to me was, don't let the things that you can't do stop you from doing the things that you can. Because I would always get up in my head. And this is something that I think should be applied to this too. Because if you're bitching and moaning about not being able to get mentored by a specific male, why is it on them to provide a service to you that they don't want to?
I mean, honestly, the whole thing, it just smacks of, you know, entitlement and, you know, self-victimization, because you know that if it was the reverse, let's say that lots of men were offering opportunities to mentor young women, these same women would be saying, we need to abolish all programs where senior males mentor young women because it could lead to grooming. They're going to complain no matter what the situation is.
Yeah.
Always. They're going to find a way to make men the problem. Always. And I'm really tired of feminists.
Oh, wait, that was the editorial that I had.
Feminism is cancer. We really need to... And see, I have a problem because it's like, I hate feminism, but I do have some friends who call themselves feminists, and I appreciate and respect their views. And I'm not saying that I hate them or that they're terrible people, or even that their feminist views are things that I disagree with. I mean, I agree with supporting women, and I agree with, you know, women being protected from violence, and I agree with advocating for women who are victims of violence. Because that happened to me. But, you know, I take issue with the idea that men don't deserve the same kind of advocacy. Who, me?
Yes.
I don't
On your just
know.
cause.
Nobody's ever tried. I think that's a compliment, I guess.
It's very much a compliment.
Thanks. I don't know. I'm kind of a rebel. I don't really think like everybody else, but I'm a loudmouth broad, so I'm not going to shut up. Somebody told me recently, they were like, just stop advocating for men, and I was like, no, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want.
Exactly. Um, what's that? Well, I think Riley Gaines was a toxic feminine because I've been thinking it's become more for men, but also women now because of current movements. I may have missed part of a chat on that, Isabel, but yeah, okay. All right, so lastly, I just want to look at this one. We won't go through the whole thing because it's damn long. But apparently, while men have the privilege of ignoring misogyny, women have to prove that they aren't misandrists. I would think that everybody should be trying to prove that they're not anything that they claim that they're not. I don't really think that there's... so if you're surprised, if you were to ask me the question I hear most frequently, you might be surprised by the answer. It's not, have you met someone yet? It's not, do you want to get married someday? And it's not, have you tried adoption? It's, do you hate men? So this is very clearly a feminist author who has written this and is sick and tired of saying, no, I don't hate men. I just am also sick and tired of saying that I am not a misandrist either. Used to fall over myself with apologies and explanations when people asked me this. That is, until I started writing about feminist topics regularly and built up years of content that I could skim through to check myself. I did a few deep dives here and there and came up with absolutely no evidence to support someone making such an assumption about me. So I started asking my own question in response, why do you ask?
Wait, hold on. So this lady who's like very biased in her own favor is like, I went back and I read the stuff that I wrote and I decided that I don't hate men on the basis, like she decided something self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the only person who's asking the question, so it's completely internal. I mean, wow, I'm so impressed. No, she's obviously not a misandrist because she says that she's not, because she's reviewed her content. And it's not man.
She's gone back and read her. She's gone back and read her articles, and as far as she's concerned, she hasn't crossed any lines that would make her considered to be a misandrist.
Yeah, you have blind spots about yourself. I mean, I appreciate that she was trying to look for something, but if people are asking that question very frequently, it's probably because she has said things that are misandrist things. I'm sorry.
Exactly, and I mean, look, and so this is a short list of the things that people come back to her when she says, why would you think I'm a misandrist? Because you're a feminist, because you're critical of the patriarchy, because you don't have a husband, because you mostly talk about women and women's experiences instead of writing about men. I guarantee this is a very curated list to make herself sound better. Because I guarantee people have come back with her, because you said this in this article that makes you sound like you hate men. If you aren't sure what misandry means, it's the mirror image, you might say, of misogyny. One is the hatred of women, the other is a hatred of men. So what does it look like? It's hard to generally describe, I'll explain why later. But you could argue that misandry in some ways looks similar to some forms of misogyny. For instance, a blanket hatred, suspicion, or disregard for all men and anything considered masculine, or the refusal to see men as anything beyond negative gender stereotypes, like the narratives that all men are abusive, animalistic, violent, or emotionally vacant. There are a few things that I believe. You think? Okay.
I mean, it's okay. It's adequate enough, I'd say.
It's vague enough that it's not like hitting you from the left side sort of thing.
Yeah.
These are a few things that I believe, biased disclaimer, are potentially valid. Notice how she says potentially valid examples of misandry. Like, she's labeled all these things that could be that would be misogynistic, but here's a few that are potentially valid examples of misandry. Many men's rights groups have spread a particularly expansive definition of misandry, one that considers the term feminism to be a synonym. Oh, I don't know if that's accurate. First appeared in the dictionary in 1656. We don't need all this history. Where are we?
By the way, I found that tweet that you were looking for. I guess, a friend of mine sent it to me because I guess he's watching. Yep. Hi, Oscar. Thank you. I just sent it to you on Twitter. So if you wanted to include it.
Oh, sweet. Okay, hang on. So yeah, for anyone that hasn't quite seen the craziness from this kind of crap, where are we? Open image, new tab. This is literally something that someone posted on 23 July 2020. Men, if a woman accuses you of rape, even if you didn't do it, you shut up, you accept the charges. Women have been systematically oppressed for years, and you giving up some years of your freedom doesn't compare to the oppression that they've been through. Let's put this in another context. I'm going there. Imagine if this was a tweet put out there by someone of color. White people, if someone accuses you of murder, even if you didn't do it, you shut up and accept the charges because we of color have been systematically oppressed for years.
Yeah.
Does that make any more sense in any sort of context? Ambic, you know exactly how much that pisses me off.
I just, Hayden, it's so perverted. I don't even have words for it. It's very obvious what's wrong with this.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is that it could be satire, but there are women who think like this. So even if it is satire, there's a woman out there who's going to go, yeah, totally, I agree with that, in a very serious way. It's, oh God, I can't. it's really fucked up.
Oh shit! Chandler got to the point where she went, white girl just can't even. I scored today, guys.
Yeah.
Alright, so I scrolled a little bit further down because there was a whole bunch of crap in there about the history of Misandry or whatever
Is
that was just
Misandry
unnecessary.
even real? Are birds real? Oh man. I can't.
No, birds don't exist. They're drones. We know this. Remember how I promised to further explain why Misandry is so hard to define? The reason I said that is because I'm not certain Misandry exists. Yes, it is as real as a concept, but again, I'd like to point out from a purely logical position that Misandry can't really exist in a patriarchy.
You've made up all of these words in your head. None of these things mean anything. Shut up. I can't. It's too much for me. But go on.
Now, that's not to say that men aren't harmed by the patriarchy. They absolutely are. But I don't consider that misandry. Oh, we're damaging ourselves is what she's saying, so therefore it's our own fault.
Isn't that victim blaming? Don't feminists hate that?
That's what it certainly sounds like.
When it's a man, you can victim blame, and it feels really good to do that, because men deserve to suffer, right? Because women have suffered.
And see, here's the problem, because Isabel's making this synonymous with feminism, which is entirely, like, I understand the logic on that, but this is where people are, like, this is where it sort of gets massively fucked up, because when you equate the two, it really does some damage, honestly.
So the thing about feminism is, like, okay, it's radical feminism that's like this.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Like, to a certain extent, I support feminist ideals to the point where it is for equity, not equality, though. Because I think that a certain amount does need to be lifted up, but I don't believe it's, I need to kick men off the perch on the way up sort of thing. Like...
Right. I mean, well, I have my feminism stream every Friday, and I think that feminism is an incredible danger to society. I think it's horribly toxic. On that same note, I advocate for women. I respect women. I acknowledge systemic issues that affect women. And as a woman, I care about how women experience the world. And but I don't have to be a feminist in order to do that. I'll also say, while Hayden's gone, that there are some feminist ideals that I agree with. Like, I agree that women should have sex-segregated sports. So any woman who's, fighting for that, it's hard because some of them do it from this perspective of, like, all men are violent and whatever. But, with the trans thing, it's a little bit different. And so I respect, Riley Gaines and J.K. Rowling. I think that they're, mostly doing things that I agree with. So I don't hate all feminists or feminism, and I'm not here to say that women should be subjugated or oppressed, but, like, I think we have all the rights that we need. I think that we have, equality. I think we're good. I think that we're getting to the point where we are starting to abuse men and call it equality, and that's really messed up, and we need to start correcting for that because it's a problem.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And sorry, the wife walked in to let me know she was leaving, so I just had to... Hey, goodbye.
That's okay. I held down the fort.
I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, secondly, I believe that misandry and sexism against men are mostly mythical in a patriarchy, as reverse racism is in a white supremacist culture. Black people railing against white people and white culture, or expressing generalized anger, hate, and/or suspicion towards white people seems pretty normal to me, considering that white people in a white supremacist culture, what they have put them through. These are normal emotions and reactions to generations of abuse, disenfranchisement, slavery, displacement, rape, and murder.
They're not normal emotions, but they've been normalized in a society that doesn't know what the hell is going on.
No, exactly.
This woman's delusional, and of course it makes sense to her, to equate this with the whole white supremacy thing, because both of those things are equally invalid. Oh, God, I can't. Okay, moving on.
Migraine Gain. The author of this is a crackhead.
Yep.
Your shit. No way, they delivered it? Look at the state of this shit. Was there a second box?
No, I don't have to look at that one.
Oh, okay.
Where'd you get it? You got a
My
present?
swords! They finally arrived from Matsuri!
Oh my god, no way. Finally. I know you were waiting for this for a long
Thank
time.
you, babe. Oh, that's hilarious. I had no idea.
That's fabulous. Oh, I'm so happy for you. I love it. We're doing this stream about, about toxic masculinity, and you have your swords, which are like these violent tools of, oppression.
I know, I want to rip it open and show it, but I don't want to get this particular stream yeeted.
Well, are they real swords, or are they, they're like...
No, they're the foam ones that I picked up.
Right.
Oh, but the lightsaber blades are in there. Ooh, the lightsaber blades are in there. Oh, I gotta stop. We're focusing on a very serious topic here, Hayden.
Let's focus, yes.
Okay. All right. Hating a demographic because the demographic has oppressed, tortured, or abused you is not the same as the thing as hating a demographic because of the color of their skin. Likewise,
those bad.
Exactly. Okay. Likewise, those feminists who speak of hatred of men or of men being trash are simply expressing normal human emotion that encapsulates the rage, frustration, and disenfranchisement that women regularly feel in a culture that sees them as the second sex. I'm not alone in my assessment of... You're crazy.
I'm sorry, I can't stop interjecting. I'll mute myself. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I keep interrupting.
Others also argue that it does not exist, reminding us that misandry isn't systemic or systematic. All you have to do is look at the statistics for corroboration on the one. Women perform most of the domestic labor. Women make less money than men. Heterosexual women have fewer orgasms than men. Way to throw that in. And we are far, far from having equal representation in boardrooms or government positions. That's why I brought up that thing before about why the hell do they care about, let's get in the boardroom, as opposed to let's go and, unclog the toilet or whatever and be a plumber. Oh, I know, because they're easy jobs that pay well and that they think will make them more powerful. I really wish I had that clip from Jordan Peterson tearing that politician apart. I really do. I suspect a lot of people would agree that we're about to have as much luck finding evidence of actual misandry as we would have catching a glimpse of that jolly bearded fellow who sneaks into our house one night a year. Fuck you.
You want to know what's really funny about that? I actually just tweeted that. Like, some lady was trying to argue with me, and she was like, well, what about the, she was like, no, feminism is important, because what about the patriarchy? And what about the wage gap? And I was just like, okay, I believe in the patriarchy as much as I believe in Santa Claus. Like, show me evidence of either. Doesn't exist. Sorry. It's like... It's a myth, and it's a boogeyman that women use to feel oppressed and to feel victimized. And the fact of the matter is that in your life, you're probably not very victimized. But if you want to feel victimized, just blame men. It's a really easy solution, and you'll feel better.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Guy Fano 1, there was multiple instances. He went on an Australian show called Q&A, and he basically wound up having the exact same conversation with one of our politicians. And, yeah, so he's had to do it on multiple occasions. Okay. Do I hate men? You shouldn't be surprised by my answer, which is that I refuse to answer. Why? Because I'm a woman living in a patriarchal society who have been routinely shortchanged and oppressed by this dominant hierarchy. I refuse to allow misogynistic, anti-feminist rhetoric to force on me the burdensome responsibility of having to constantly prove I am not a misandrist.
Oh, God.
I'm fairly confident that the entire sentence that I just read out is contradictory. Based on how you just answered, I would call you a misandrist, and I don't know that you would be able to prove otherwise, based on this freaking article.
Hidden.
Based on all of the...
I just want you to ask me a question. Ask me if I'm a Rastafarian.
Chandler?
Yeah.
Are you a pastafarian?
No. See, it's that easy. If you're not something, then you just say no. It's a really simple answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's very obvious that if you can't say no, then yes, you definitely are that thing. So, I don't know why it's so hard for her, and why she has to write a whole article. Like, just, it's one word, lady. Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
She absolutely is a misandry. Jesus. Anyway, sorry. I have a lot. I can't stand women like this. But I'm not going to interrupt any further. I want you to get through it.
Oh, good. Based on all the evidence, it's far more likely that what's coming at me is misogyny. So asking if you're a misandrist is apparently misogynist. And that means the burden ought to be on people who ask me to prove that they aren't misogynists. What the fuck? Frankly, I think much deeper questions need to be asked in the first place. For instance, what is anti-male in the androcentric society? Who benefits from the conflation of the terms feminism and misandry? With what logic do we argue that women should feel a trusting camaraderie for men in a culture in which women are systematically and systemically exploited by them and all the systems that protect and empower them? And yes, what exactly constitutes hatred of men in a culture that prioritizes and protects them above all others? When I hear a woman is being called out for misandry, I usually find the same thing: a woman who isn't afraid to loudly insist on her own equality. If that's what it means to hate men, well, I guess I'm guilty as charged. This is a woman in 2023 saying, "I'm proud to be a misogynist," because asking me whether or not I'm a misandrist is misogyny. Because everything in society is geared against me. Clearly, this woman has never been through the family courts.
No, I mean, it reminds me of Jessica Taylor, who's this woman who was like very pro Amber Heard, and she was really outspoken. She went to the trial, and she was interviewed by Nick Wallace on his podcast, and she insisted that if you say that a woman can't abuse a man, that's misogyny, because women can do whatever men can do. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I felt like I wanted to vomit after hearing that, and that is what's wrong with society.
Oh, that is both terrible and hilarious.
Like, she goes through this whole freaking article just to admit at the end that, yes, she hates men. Like, we knew that, lady. You didn't need to... I mean, it's not a big reveal.
No, exactly.
God, that was disgusting. Oh, Jesus. Wow. I'm just... no words?
No, fair enough. But guys, that's pretty much everything that I had on the topic, and I think we've well and truly melted Chandler's brain. Oh, we have a $1 super Rumble rant, sorry. Oh Lord, she isn't a misandrist. She is a good thing. Don't necessarily agree with you on that, Jamazq?
Wait, I'm not sure if I understand what that means.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining me, Chandler. This was
Always.
This was a lot of fun, and like I was saying to Chandler earlier, I need to start having more guests on and doing actual quality content like this. So, yeah, hopefully you'll come back at some stage and we can discuss something a little less controversial, shall we say?
I'd be very happy to come on anytime.
Whether the sky's blue or whatever.
Well, I love your channel, and I always love being a guest, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, much appreciated. So, guys, as always, please remember, you are not a piece of shit. You do have value, and you very much contribute to society, especially if you double-check whether or not you've hit that like button. Tomorrow, I will be doing a review of the 7 News Spotlight video on Lucy Letby, the baby-killing nurse. Gonna see whether or not that works or not. If I get yeeted from YouTube, we will continue it over on Rumble, just because it's always helpful when they collate all the graphics and everything, and I can just sit and watch and discuss it and whatever else. So, but as always, people, stay healthy, wealthy, and wise, and we will catch you on the flip side. Cheers, guys. And where's the branding? Oh, there it's gone.
This shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks. Don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Alright then. I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out.